All right, and we are live.
Definitely.
Chris, I am fired up today, man.
I am. You got me super curious, man. I don't even know where to begin.
I'm fired up. We got tons of stuff to talk about.
Yes.
Tons to cover. Tons of material.
Lots of that's been on my mind all day.
All right, so this is episode 41 of BJJ and Brews. Like, subscribe, share. We're on social media, Instagram, Facebook. You can shoot us an email, bjjandbrews@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you just prefer audio, you can get it on any one of your favorite audio platforms for podcasts. That's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google if you're weird like Chris, and then there's other stuff like Stitcher and these other things that I'm not even familiar with.
So
but I see
many
people
out there.
Yeah,
I mean, a competition breeds a better product, but it also makes it very difficult for customer or consumers to even begin.
Paralysis by, not analysis,
well,
but paralysis of options.
Paradox of choice.
Yeah, paradox of choice. That's the.
This is coming from the man who married a woman who will just like stare at boxes of pasta, trying to decide that which one is the best value for money. Also, per like, not only from like volume and mass, but also like nutritional content. I'm like, all right, we just gotta go. Like, that's why it was great when I introduced her to Aldi, which is a more European style limited choice type of grocery store. Because I mean, you go to Publix, you can shop forever for just fucking beans, right? But like Aldi, you got maybe two choices. So the paradox of choice, ladies and gentlemen, you save a little time, be a little more efficient with things. So just download and subscribe.
There we go.
Yeah, man.
Leave a review if you feel so compelled. So
all 14 of you.
All 14. So, Chris,
sir,
how do we want to talk about the subject of, what do we want to say, lineage, getting promoted? What's the...
I mean, I guess it's lineage.
So I'll give you some context.
Lineage indicates that there's a line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I wanted to do a little more investigating on this, but I was unable to.
I mean, there's nothing to investigate,
I know. So it's going to be hard to talk about this without. Well, we're just going to talk about scenarios. Let's just talk about scenarios here, and a scenario that we were discussing earlier today while we were both working. And we were chatting with each other, procrastinating from our actual jobs.
It's called the bathroom break.
Yeah, bathroom break.
In the professional world.
In the professional. Is this idea of...
There's a lot of ideas behind it, right?
So let me just use an example from the business world. And I don't know if this applies to your sector, but as a software engineer, it definitely was fairly common knowledge that if you wanted to get a promotion, you're better and a significant raise, you're better off accepting a position in another company. Okay? It's not getting promotions every year within your company would only take you so far. If you want to make those bigger jumps, you would go to another company and accept a more prestigious position.
Getting going to another school to do your doctorate, right? Or I mean, isn't that sort of you don't get your doctorate where you get your undergrad?
Yeah, I mean, I believe there's some truth to that as well, but I don't know if the analogy is the same in that case. But regardless, where I'm leading with this is a scenario in the Jiu-Jitsu world where you see a person get belted up at one school, switch schools, and get another belt rather quickly. And in particular, when this comes to black belts, because a purple belt, a brown belt, but a black belt to me carries a little more weight. And I've been in my 2+ years, which is not much. That's why I wanted to get your opinion on this. I always felt there's a way instructors went about promoting people, particularly to black. Yeah. It was not something that they would, here's a snap promotion to black belt. It's you've put in time with this instructor, regardless of your skill level, and that instructor trusts you enough that he or she is going to sign off for you and say, this is my black belt. And not that there's ownership or anything like that, but I vouch for you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's not something that can be developed, in my opinion, in a year.
I mean, how much time are they spending on the mat, right? Like Paul kind of talks about.
I understand.
It's like mat hours, and
and basically where this is coming from is we know of some scenarios where this has kind of happened, and I have no negativity towards the people getting promoted. Props to them. I'm just kind of curious of what's going through the heads of the people promoting them. So I now
we can't
give the floor to Chris Boo
to do that. I mean, like we can't put ourselves in their position, right? Because we're not the ones doing it, and we're not the ones who have developed the relationship.
Well, I'm going to come out and say I think it's bullshit. That's my reaction. I don't know if it's the right reaction. I could be way out of line, but my opinion is it's bullshit. And that's why I texted you. I was like, what the fuck's going on here, man? People are getting black belts like fucking loner geese. Those were my exact words.
Yeah, they definitely were your exact words. I'm not sure I agree with it.
Well, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm the first one to admit that I'm not right. I'm just articulating what my emotional first reaction was to this. And again, nothing against the people getting promoted. It's just I'm sitting there and I'm like, is my expectation off? Because I'm coming from a very limited sample size of experience. I'm not a historian of jiu-jitsu. I haven't been in multiple schools where, over a course of a long period of time where I've seen how different gym cultures, go about promotions and how they factor things in. But I always go back to the thing I go back to is the story with Paul, because that's all I know. And Paul's story, and he's told me this and he's told other people. I think you're familiar with the story as well. He went from white to brown under Marcio, already being a grappler and an MMA fighter prior to putting on the gi, but Marcio was the guy that belted him up to brown. He was on the verge of getting his black, opts to go to ATT in Coconut Creek and train under Laborio. And Laborio pretty quickly tells him up front, he's like, I'm not going to promote you to black belt for at least 3 years. And for Paul, he didn't care because he had an MMA career and that was his focus. But when it came to the jiu-jitsu side of things, Laborio was very firm in saying, I don't care about you. I mean, obviously he cares about your skills, but this is, I think, a character thing. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know what's going through Laborio's mind on this. Maybe he's just doing a Brazilian paying my dues sort of thing. So be interesting to get his perspective on that if we ever had a chance to speak to him. But my point is like, I thought an instructor wouldn't rush to give someone a black belt for the very reason that, to me, the black belt is less about the skill, because if you're a badass on the mat, you're a badass on the mat. You don't need a belt to prove that. You know what I mean? People just know that. But the belt, to me, there's more of a tradition and a character and a vouching, and these sort of ideas and concepts to me come into play. And when someone gets promoted rather suddenly to black because they switch school, not because
you
they
say
switch
like
schools,
that's a interesting choice of words.
and they switch schools,
and
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what's going through the instructor's mind that's promoting that? what compelled you to do that? Why wouldn't you wait and get to know the person more? And maybe they knew the person since childhood. I don't know
I
if these
think they
people grew
knew
up together.
them from just prior acquaintance.
Anyway,
Yeah.
this is, like I said, I'm not claiming to be right. I'm certainly not trying to stir shit. I'm just telling you what my knee-jerk immediate reaction was, whether it was right or wrong. This is what my feelings were on it. Because I was like, damn, dude. And I think about JB. JB's walking around, and I still think he's a brown belt. And this guy is like a can't-miss black belt, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And most people would agree. By most definitions, he's a martial artist. He shows respect to the art, and he's a badass on the mat as well, and he knows tons of techniques. Like, by most criterias out there I can think of, he's going to pass the test.
Agreed.
Why has he not gotten a black belt? Well,
Nobody would
now I'm
dispute
going
that.
a little farther, but he hasn't been in a school or adopted a coach that's going to promote him. And I think that's also by choice on JB's too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But,
I'm not
but
sure.
he doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's some disservice that if he shows up at a new gym, I don't think the instructor's like, Jesus Christ, man, excuse my language, but it's like, this guy needs a black belt now. This looks bad or something. It's like, no. That's not a factor. Anyway, I've ranted enough. I told you I fired up. What are your thoughts?
If there's one thing I've learned over the course of my almost 4 decades of life now, it's funny because I tend to do a lot. It's not to get super stressed out about things that I don't have control over, especially when it comes, and I've learned this in the past 6 months or 7 months since I've gotten my black belt, is just to not worry about it as much. You know, like as y'all know, I suffer from quite a bit of imposter syndrome, and I'm very self-deprecating, which you call me out on all the time. But, you know, everybody's got their own journey. Everybody makes their own set of friends and family along the way. And we can't speak for whatever it is that instructor sees. I mean, I see where you're coming from. It looks bad, right? Like, I've actually, I had a conversation with Wade Rome when Black Box had hired him a little bit to be their head instructor. And Sam and Glenn were introducing him to me and me to him, vice versa. And he was like, "Oh, see, I think I was a purple. Yeah, I was a purple belt at the time." And he's like, "Oh, where do you train?" I was like, "You know, I kind of float around. Like, you know, my home gym, if you want to call it that, is Longwood. But I'm here, you know, at Black Box also, and I work with Glenn and stuff. And I also go to, you know, I just have a lot of friends in the area, and I'll train in a lot of different places. And this is before I kind of got back with Paul and was training on the regular there. And he said something really interesting to me. He was like, "Well, how do you expect to get better?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. You know, I was kind of ronaning it up at that point with nobody really overseeing my...
Who said this to you?
Wade Rome.
Oh, okay, Wade did. Okay.
So, formerly of ATT Rockledge or whatever the case is. And, you know, he kind of was very, very sort of like stern about it and stuff. And Sam made sure to clarify, like, oh, you know, kind of sticking up for me, like, yeah, but he sticks within our family, you know, like they're all ATT gyms, they all know him well, they all trust him, he teaches classes and that sort of thing. So at the time, I mean, being just an asshole purple belt, which, you know, you're like the fucking asshole teenager at that point, right? You think you know better, and you know, that sort of thing. I didn't appreciate his statements as well, which I definitely do now. Loyalty goes both ways, as you had kind of mentioned. And like you said, like, I think I remember Paul saying something along the lines of, you know, a decent purple belt, you basically have the skill set that you're going to have, right? Like the knowledge base of a purple belt versus a black belt isn't that much different. The only main difference is, is basically teaching and understanding. But actual like knowledge probably isn't all that much different. And so if we kind of step back from based on that statement, what is the ultimate difference then? And you had just kind of touched upon it, and I've heard Paul explicitly say it is like character. You just don't be an asshole, right? And these are his words, and I'm not sure we can speak for other instructors and stuff, but let's assume for a moment that other instructors have similar criteria. What's to say that this person and other people who gym hop a lot haven't proven themselves and have gone above and beyond to prove that they have excellent character and excellent coaching skills and help grow the jiu-jitsu community and help grow the gym, especially, right? You should give back. Like that's what being a black belt ultimately is about, in my opinion. It's about service. It's about, you've put in the work for yourself. Not to say that black belts are perfect by any means, but they've put a lot of time in. And at this point, it's time to give back to the community and help bring up more black belts, right? Like that's ultimately the job of black belt, is to create more black belts. I
mean, I think as I'm listening to you, I think the broader, more generic scenario is how in any martial art, because this happens in traditional martial arts, any sort of martial art typically has a ranking system. Yep. Oftentimes has a belt system, especially if it has Japanese roots. But even something like capoeira in Brazil, they have a belt system. When the criteria is never uniform, it's always at the instructor's discretion. How does the community as a whole, how does the jiu-jitsu community as a whole in this case, how is it, because this has been around for this general issue I'm going to touch on has been around since the beginning of time, in my opinion. How do they reconcile the fact that you could have a black belt throwing belts around? In fact, I've even heard stories about people paying for their black belt sort of thing. But I'm going to dismiss that one. But it's this sort of thing is like you have, let's say there are 20 black belts in the world. Just for the sake of argument, there are only 20 in the world. One of them has, quote, lower standards than the other. How does the community reconcile that?
I don't know, man. I mean, like, I think back to this situation, and I'll have to contact Glenn about it. Have I told you about it when he and I were teaching at Vista Lakes, and this dude came and said that he was a blue belt under Kenny Florian, of all people, right? Like season 1 Ultimate Fighter.
Ken Flo.
Yeah, and the dude he was not a blue belt. He was garbage, man. Like he couldn't even do just like your basic armbar drill, right? Just did the thing that every fucking like just garbage brand new white belt does. They just kick their partner across the face instead of moving their, just all that nonsense. And afterwards, Glenn and I actually we talked to each other. We're like, man, like if he signs up and he joins our gym, like this guy looks like shit. Like what do we do? Like our Hiroki, who was at that time like a 14-year-old white belt kid. I mean, he was kind of like the equivalent of like Nick, right? And this kid would wipe the fucking floor with this guy, and he was a grown man claiming to be a blue belt. So you should at least just have some fundamentals in place. So we went and we talked to Dean about it. Actually, he came by and I think it's when he gave Glenn his purple belt, and we chatted with him about it, and he's like, you know what, you honor his belt. If that's what he says he is, and that's who get it, who he says gave it to him, then you honor it, because at the end of the day, he knows where he stands, and then And if he happens to stay that belt a long time until he's ready for the next belt, then so be it. And if he gets frustrated with himself and moves on to the gym because he's not getting belted up fast enough, that's his problem, right? All you can do is honor his belt and stick to your standards. So that's sort of my general attitude about that. I don't know whether I'm just being super wishy-washy about it or not, but that's the same can probably be said for a black belt. Like there is no, like you said, there's no unified or it really
would it bother you at some level if you're standing up there at the front of class with the fellow black belts that are participating in class, and there's a guy standing next to you that you're like, this guy's not a black belt by a mile?
I mean,
would it bother you? Or would you just be like, whatever, dude, I don't care?
I think it's one of those things, right? And I had actually, was Paul? And yeah, Paul was in the conversation where I had talked about one of those pay for black belts that I remember distinctly as a white belt. And he was a brown belt, only did private lessons, and
Ashton Kutcher.
Well, he's a brown belt, right? Is he a black belt yet without sparring?
No, he's a brown belt now.
Yeah, he's a brown belt, okay. But no sparring, by the way, which
no sparring.
I don't understand that. But it's a special style of jiu-jitsu, right? Where they can develop the skills of world champions while not having to spar. Everybody has their own journey. But Paul remembers this guy distinctly, and I do too, even as a white belt. And even then, like I've been in the sport for less than a year, and I knew then. People know, right? People know where everybody, like you'd kind of touched upon it, earlier this year, where there's a general pecking order of things, and people know. You don't have to say it, right? So,
are we touching on the social hierarchy?
Beyond social hierarchy, right? This is actual hierarchy. Pecking order hierarchy. But I mean, like, everybody knows, and that, I mean, that's I don't think it's worth it to. I'm curious on Paul's thoughts about things. To me, it's sort of I understand moving gyms and whatnot, if it's a logistical thing. But
I said, to me,
sort of insulting.
My WTF moment, and again, I'll continue to qualify this by saying I'm not claiming to be reacting maturely or properly or of sound mind. I'm just telling you what my emotional guttural reaction is. My WTF is not directed at the person or persons being promoted.
Right.
It's what the fuck is the process that's going through the head of the instructor that's like, yeah, I'm giving this black belt out. You know what I mean?
Or some people just like to claim them for themselves, right? Like, regardless of how much work they've put in to the person and with the person. Hell, it'd be hard to argue anybody wanting JB as their black belt, right? Like that's to be able to sit there. I mean, it's like the parent who, I mean, just being a parent now, I know how hard it is to distance yourself from your child's accomplishments. But it's easy to say, like, to kind of like ride on their coattails, right? Like, for people who are very successful and very skilled at what they do, to say like, oh, that's my black belt. That's probably pretty tempting on some people's behalf, right?
I mean, thus far I haven't experienced that, so I don't doubt that sort of behavior exists among instructors where they, for lack of a better term, brag about their black belts. Like, look at this. Look at the world champions I've produced. Look at the number of black belts. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's probably a selling point too. Does it water down the art?
Well, it does if they're prematurely promoting them.
Sure they do. Sure it does. But
I mean, the thing is I feel like the professional camps are more guilty of holding people back so they can rack up titles at lower ranks.
That's another story too. Right? Like and some people that's their qualifying standard too. Is like you have to win a competition at your belt level, right? Because isn't that sort of the truest. That's the ultimate test, right? Can you perform and beat people who are supposed to have been doing it for the same amount of time as you, at the same rank as you, right? So if you're beating them, then technically you've earned your way to the next belt level, which is hard to disagree with also, right?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is a situation where it's probably much ado about nothing, because I don't expect anyone that I'm thinking about to give a shit or care, nor should they care about my opinion. And at the end of the day, it's sort of like, that was my reaction. It definitely something that happens all over the world all the time in the jiu-jitsu community and probably other competitive martial arts, you know. But I do feel like somehow loyalty is wrapped up into this as well.
Yeah. That's
because you're kind of like, well, what about the place you just left and the time you put in at that place? It's almost like you just are like, well, I'm switching programs and who cares what the standards are at the new place? It's like, I don't know. It's kind of like, well, if at your original gym you were getting belted up on this criteria and then you suddenly go to another gym and they're belting up on a totally different criteria, is it fair to even say, oh, there's someone to blame in the situation? It just seems odd.
It's
you know,
I mean, like you said, there's nobody to blame. It's very.
It does conjure up emotions, though. We cannot deny that.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, even mixed ones, right? We'll have
I find
talk a little bit more offline about that.
Yeah, well, what I think the thing that I that I understand that I'm potentially doing here is I'm a blue belt, so I'm a pissant in the hierarchy of the belts, and I'm like.
But you're allowed to have an opinion.
I'm critiquing what a black belt's deciding to do in terms of promoting other people to black belt. And how that's happening. So even in the context of jiu-jitsu, I understand the irony of like, who the fuck is this guy to even, speak up in reality, like I should just keep my mouth shut and train. I get that, but this is a podcast. I said I was fired up.
You're definitely fired up.
Oh, hell yeah, man. I'm fucking fired up. All right. So enough about that. I've probably alienated some people and they want to kick my ass now if they start to figure out, if they're trying to think like,
I mean, like it's yeah.
Moving on.
Yes. Let's.
So I'm going to
how's your
blow
back
your mind.
feeling, by the way?
Oh, so my back. So for
your health,
to clue the audience in. Yeah, to clue the audience in, I lifted this morning, felt my lower back get a little strained, trained right afterwards, remained kind of loose. It stiffened up in the afternoon.
Ugh.
Chris was aware of this. Didn't stiffen up too bad. I went and trained. It loosened up pretty well. We'll see how I feel tomorrow after 8 hours of sleep or so. That will be kind of the first test of to what degree it actually stiffens up, So we'll see, Good old deadlifts, lower thoracic spine, the lower lumbar.
Got to switch to the hex bar, man.
I find that messes with my back too.
Does it really?
Yeah, but I understand it's going to give you slightly better posture on the. But yeah, I mean. Dude, anytime you're lifting a heavy load,
of course.
your lower back's going to be under strain to some degree. Which again, I thought the irony is which I told you earlier, which is, Paul posts these videos of him fucking deadlifting, significant amount of weight, And then
For reps.
then he's like, "Hey man, you work out today?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I did back." He's like, "So did I." It's like, "Yeah, man, my lower back, man, I put a lot of strain on it and stuff." And he looks at me. He's like, "Yeah, I didn't." He's like, "I did back today. I did everything but lower back. I didn't."
That's interesting.
I was like, "What?"
That you guys refer to deadlift as a lower back exercise.
Well, it's going to put strain on the lower back.
I
It's not specifically a lower back exercise.
Okay.
It better not be, or else everyone's going to be exploding their
Exactly. I would
discs.
say like that's where you get the that's the no bueno if you're
Exactly.
hinging excessively at the lower back and not the hips. So
Correct. So, I told you I had a surprise for you.
what is the surprise?
Well, the surprise is this, Chris. I broke down.
And
I suffered from fear of missing out. I had severe FOMO. The marketing worked.
the marketing.
Keenan got me.
Oh, I know.
I purchased
the deal.
the Lapel Encyclopedia
Yeah.
because it would never be at this price ever again.
I mean, inflation happens, right? So you can theoretically believe in that. And it's
For
constantly
all I
updating
know,
content.
he's going to raise the next time he has a sale. I've seen this thing go on sale multiple times. It'll be a penny more next time.
Right? He didn't lie to you. So
I know.
But no, or what he can do is never be at this price again. Right?
Well, he did say it will never be this cheap ever again.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, I do like. I was aware of that wording. I was like, yeah, if he says it will never be this price again, he can just go up or down.
Go up or down. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm aware of that. So I have the Lapel Encyclopedia icon on my phone. I've got
purely
the app.
online content. No hard copy at all.
Correct. No hard copy at all.
Fuck that, man. See, like
Fully digital. Lifetime access. Continually updated. His marketing's good, man.
oh yeah,
I have to give it to him. I purchased it. I redirected to a confirmation page that had an embedded video in it that had Keenan welcoming me
And thanking
me and thanking me and telling me where to start. And I was like, man, he's nailing that marketing. He's nailing the experience. And then I logged in and actually started browsing some of the content, which again, I always was like, I'll buy it later when I actually want to explore lapel stuff. I'm not interested in dedicating time to lapel stuff right now. There are other things I want to work on first. But eventually I want to get to that and study that. Whether I play that game or not, or play facets of it, I at least want to be aware of it and understand it, at a deeper level. So I was always going to go to Keenan as my reference for that because I do feel like he's at the forefront of lapel innovations for the most part. And this is at least a good base in terms of giving you exposure to the different positions. But I'm still, like I said, wasn't planning to buy it now, but because of that FOMO, that fear of missing out, because gosh darn it, it's never going to be this cheap again. I broke down and I put in my credit card information and I purchased it, Chris.
Are you experiencing buyer's remorse or?
No, I'm not experiencing buyer's remorse. I'm just begrudgingly admitting that Keenan Cornelius's marketing and advertising broke me down over the course of about a week with this International Lapel Day bonanza, social media, guerrilla marketing.
How diligent are you on social media of going through as you get an ad to either hide and, never see ad from again?
I only will do that on YouTube.
I do that on everything, man. Like, if it's something that I just know I'm never going to have any use for, or, my phone or billions of smart devices are all listening in on my random conversations, and they happen to pick up something and advertise some random bullshit like, a COVID key or something, you know, like so I don't have to touch shit.
I got that one too.
Oh, I get all kinds of shit. So many backpacks because I love backpacks and water bottles for some reason. But you know, I make a conscious effort to go through.
You like water? I don't even see you bring a water bottle to class.
Yeah, because I'm too busy drinking fucking 64 ounces at work or 96 ounces at work.
So why are they recommending water bottles? Are you browsing for water bottles online?
I don't get it. I mean,
is Stacy looking at water bottles?
No, Stacy's not. I don't know how the hell.
Because if she's like looking for that stuff on the same router that you connect to, then they can like basically say, oh, these devices all connect, so maybe they all are the same user.
It very well could be. I don't know. But either way, I just end up with a lot of random shit. Right now it happens to be Transformers toys because guess what Connor's into right now. So I get fucking Amazon links and shit for Rescue Bot in my goddamn Instagram feed, which I make sure to go through and kill it. So that being said, I think somewhere along the lines I've clicked off on Keenan to reduce the amount of Keenan I see. So I only saw like one of those the other day about the lapel being $107, I think it was, right?
No, it was 140.
Was it?
Yeah.
Did you miss out on the 107? You poor sucker.
I know. God darn it.
So where are you going to begin? I mean, like, because you're a blue belt, nearing purple belt, you know, probably December. What are your thoughts on how you jump into it? Because you have a pretty progressive understanding of jiu-jitsu, and you're a very good student of the game.
Well, thank you.
And this is extremely
your check is in the mail. Your check is in the mail for those compliments. Thank you. So, I think right now it's been an interesting few weeks in terms of training for me because I'm continuing to work half guard, which has its ups and downs, especially depending on who I roll with. But I'm definitely getting more knowledgeable about the actions and reactions that people do. And I definitely, with the exception of Paul, sometimes I don't feel like people are blowing through my guard. Although Paul fucking blew through my half guard.
Yeah, he just like cartwheels over you, right? Like it's
no. I mean, he'll get into half guard and then he'll just blow right through it. And there's a grip he does that I need to respect that grip a little more. Anyway, that's a side point. But this is kind of where I am with it, right? And I need to make an effort. I forgot tonight, and I'm kind of pissed about it, that I actually keep forgetting to experiment with half butterfly and inserting the butterfly hook from half guard, because I think that will give another look that will help what I'm trying to do out, especially since I like to play single leg X, and that lends itself to getting into single leg X.
Yes, it does.
I have been enjoying that. So that's been my primary thing. For the most part, unless the person is insistent on pulling guard themselves, I'm going to pull guard. I'm going to go to half guard. I'm going to work from there and mess around with stuff. Now, in addition to that, my auxiliary stuff that I've been playing with has been related to some Globetrotter videos that I came across from this recent camp in Iceland that I did not attend. I don't think any American could attend because I don't think they're going to let any Americans into the country at this point.
America is the Florida of the world, aren't we?
Correct. Anyway, I mean, if Canada won't accept us, then you know it's really bad. So, anyway, in particular, there was one video that I really liked, but both by the same guy, this German Vale Tudo black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt.
Interesting.
He seems to be
black belt.
He seems to be primarily a no-gi guy.
Is
so
he
I think Vale Tudo
or Vale?
Oh, Luta Libre. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, so like I'm not sure that there's a
yeah. Luta Libre. I'm pretty sure.
Which is basically catch wrestling, but
correct. Anyway, he did a seminar on the claw ride.
The what?
The claw ride. So the claw ride, I found out, is actually a term from wrestling, or at least some wrestlers will use that term. And it is a grip where, and he explains it from turtle. It's typically a way to attack turtle. It's where, imagine a person in turtle. You're attacking the person in turtle. You're on the side. You're not north-south with them. You're covering
you don't
their
have like
hip.
a front headlock.
Correct. You're not attacking a front headlock. You've got a tight waist with the arm closest to the turtle opponent, so you're kind of cupping their waist.
Near side arm.
Their hip. Yeah, your near side arm is cupping their far hip.
We gotta
you're not going in too deep.
Consistent language here.
Yeah, you're not going in too deep because you don't want to risk them trapping that and rolling you. So near side arm cupping the far side hip, and your, I would say outside arm, but you would say far side?
Far side arm, yeah.
Far side arm is reaching in deep under your opponent's near armpit.
Yes.
And basically going over their lat or cupping their neck.
Or cupping their,
He was showing it. He was showing the lat. I've seen wrestlers typically go around the neck. And you almost are hiding your shoulder from view. Your cheek or your ear is on his shoulder.
Yes.
On his near side shoulder. And you're cupping deep. Almost like you're trying to do a Doris, but with the Doris, you're obviously attacking with your other arm. So, but the same idea. If you attack a Doris with the near side arm, you're going all the way through. Same idea, but you're using the far side arm, and you're cupping the far side trap of your opponent, and you're almost trying to, instead of using your fingers, you're trying to use your whole wrist to cup it.
Yes.
So that's called the claw ride. Now, your near side knee is touching the elbow of your near side arm that's cupping the waist. So if I've used my terminology right and people can follow my language, they should have a picture in their head of what I'm describing.
I'm not sure how, if I have a tight waist with my near side arm, let's say I have my right arm reaching to the far side, which would be the right side of their waist.
So you're on the left side of the guy.
Correct.
So you're on their left
side.
So your right hip is touching.
How would I bring my right knee to touch my right elbow?
Because your right elbow is basically around his tailbone, if not closer to the near side hip.
Okay.
So in essence, you're just bringing your.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, you're using.
So if you think about, so
not so much as like.
So let me just talk about a related topic. When people like to attack the back, if you break their posture, so let's say we're in the same position, and I'm not doing this. I've just got the near side grip on the hip of the opponent. That's it. My far side arm is free, not doing anything. I pull to break my opponent down to their hip, to their near side hip.
Yes.
Right.
You pull them towards you, basically.
I pull them towards me, right? And then a lot of people, and I've seen Paul teach this, if you want to talk about taking the back and inserting your hook, what you first do is you actually drape your near side leg and thigh across kind of their hips. So as they re-turtle, they pull you up.
Yes.
And then you can insert your far side leg into the near side hook position.
Right.
Okay? Same idea. That's how it feels. Is you're kind of like resting your inner thigh knee kind of across their lower back tailbone area.
Okay.
Okay? So, from that position you can do a lot of cool things in terms of back takes, but it's a different control point for attacking the turtle. I found that interesting, and I've been messing with that when I have opportunities to attack the turtle. So that's my auxiliary stuff. And then there's another control position from side control that he taught in another seminar that I'm also experimenting with, that in a way kind of blends into this occasionally, but not so much, but it does blend in with what I kind of do when I pass the side. And it is I don't even know how to describe it because it's not in our vernacular. But it would be if you start in position 3 of side control,
The
meaning
double
I'm covering
unders position.
double unders, covering their hips and their head with a crossface. I tripod, rotate and look towards my opponent's head, and drive my shoulder, the one that was of the side that my hand was covering the hip. I drive my shoulder into their hip pocket. So almost, if we were to take the ground away and I were to rotate, they would almost be resting on my shoulder in a carry. Like if I were just carrying them on my shoulders, that's kind of how it would look like. And now I use not my hand, but I use my my contracted arm. So it's going to be kind of my upper arm and elbow, which is going to be bent and facing my hand facing toward their head to block their thigh from regarding.
Okay.
So my back is facing their feet and my chest is facing their head, and I'm driving my shoulder into their pocket, and my one arm is covering their hips using my actual arm, not my hand, and my other arm is free. And he displayed that as a control position as a good mechanism to get into our position 4 or reverse Keisakatami. I have found a lot of success with this, and I've also found success with this in situations where before I had issues with frames. Because this kind of takes away frames because you're a little too far away, but even people with long arms that can create pressure on me and make things uncomfortable, because I'm facing them, I can immediately drop my legs and shins and actually get into shin on arm situations or even crucifix situations. So you follow me?
Yeah.
So those are the things that I'm working on. And I went on this tangent because you said, well, when is the lapel stuff going to come into play? And what would I first start with? I believe that once I feel comfortable with half guard, which God knows when I would, but when I'm comfortable enough with it or fed up with it and want to do something different, I will probably start exploring lapel guards and start annoying everybody I train with because I'm going to start wrapping shit everywhere. And I'm going to go through the whole thing. Each unit, he's divided up into chapters. There are about 13 or 14 chapters, but there are only, I'd say, about 5 or 6 that are dedicated towards the lapel guards. I've already gone through just cursorily last night the classic worm guard. And the classic worm guard seems to be something that he even talks about more for posterior sake. It's something that good to know conceptually, but it's not a position he plays as much anymore. He ends up playing what he calls reverse Della Worm a lot, and that seems to be the in vogue position. But that's probably not the position I'll start with. I kind of will probably dabble with the lapel lasso guard because I do play lapel guard, or not lapel. I play lasso guard sometimes, and to just play it with the lapel seems like an interesting extension of what I already kind of know, so I can at least maybe work with that a little more easily. And then I'll probably get into actual, a traditional lasso guard, a traditional lapel guard, where you're now passing this thing under people's legs and doing that sort of thing. He's got new stuff he calls platinum passing, which is, I think, his take on, which is not anything fancy. It's just, he put a fancy name to it. It's basically just using the lapel and hooking a body part, typically a leg or a foot, and using that to pass, So we'll see. I definitely want to develop a longer range guard. I don't know if ethically I'll be able to get over what I feel about lapel guards because I think they're kind of cheap, but I think they're necessary because they're within the rules, so you have to know about them, which goes into my longer thing about. That's why I've been enjoying no-gi more, because I feel like you don't have that cheapness in no-gi. So anyway, that's my long roundabout answer. What's your experience with lapel guard? Has it only been going against a guy like Zach, who, from my understanding, is the only person that actually does lapel guard of any kind?
Mark does it a lot. I don't think he's. I think he's like experimenting with it. I don't think he
Hmm.
necessarily has a system in place because usually it'll just be something he does, and then like it's. Have you seen that video of the guy who literally just uses the lapel and like basically ties up a dude's wrist? And he's just the guy who has his wrist tied up, who's in the other guy's guard, with the lapel wrapped around his wrist and just immobilizing it. He can't. The guy's not attacking that arm that's trapped. He's not doing anything. He's not trying to sweep. But at the same time, the guy who's top guard position can't pass either. So because he has literally just one of his arms immobilized. So it's like this.
Got him. I got you.
And just his face is just like, like, and you can tell for a good 2 minutes that he's just annoyed, right? Like, and that's been my experience with it. I can't say I've
Keenan even admits.
What's that?
Keenan even admits. Sorry to interrupt, but Keenan already admits when talking about lapel lasso, he thought it was just a stalling position, and then he discovered some techniques and attacks that made him change his mind. But in his mind, because he's coming from a competitive background, stalling is something
it's
that
strategic.
he can get penalized on. So he wants guards that are attacking and dynamic, even if they are demoralizing to your opponent and shutting down their movement. It's not going to be treated as a stalling position. Now, that's how he's framing it. We'll see what it feels like in practice. But what was crazy is I got exposed to like the names of two submissions that I didn't know. I kind of knew. I had heard of one before, but I hadn't seen what it actually looked like. And it's the Jesus, man. I actually already forgot one. One's the Tariq Pilata, and then there was another type of Pilata. So
Tariq Plata. I'm familiar.
And
I've heard
there's
another refer to it. I've never actually seen it in action either.
Yeah, and then there was another Pilata, something Pilata.
What, Go-Go Plata maybe?
No. But no, this is also an arm lock. Like a go-go
It's a
and
choke.
And a go-go and a mono Pilata are both chokes, I believe. This is or strangle rather. These
good call.
These are both joint locks on the shoulder. And it's just it was kind of interesting to see that where they're basically trapping the arm. One way was trapping the arm almost in like a key lock, but instead of doing a Kimura, the first half of the grip is with your arm, and the second half is actually with cup your thigh. But you could almost see yourself doing a Kimura if you decided to incorporate your other arm instead. And I believe that's the Tariq Pilata, or Tariqa Pilata, or whatever the heck it's called. Anyway, it is definitely going to expose me to some new school jiu-jitsu and some new school terminology, which is going to be worthwhile. And Keenan does a good job explaining stuff, but I definitely am going to have to feel, the one thing I've felt about half guard is that what I've studied with half guard from instructionals,
versus
they do a pretty good job of describing the reality of the situation. Yeah. Whereas so far with Keenan, and I could be missing a lot of it right away because I'm such a noob at it. But the times I've experimented with it, it seems like there's a little more, let's just say, invisible jiu-jitsu in the middle that he might not talk about, or at least I haven't seen him talk about yet. Maybe I miss a chapter because I know there's some principles chapters. So maybe I need to go over the general principles chapters, and then he'll cover all those things where it's like, I'll try something and then something really bad will happen where I'm like, well, this would happen if the guy doesn't fully resist, but now they're fully resisting in a live roll and stuff's going off the rails. Whereas with half guard, things don't go off the rails as much. It's a little more controlled. And maybe that's just the dynamic, the characteristics of the position itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
And how you guys are interlocked. But it might also have to do with the fact that half guard is a far more mature and developed guard that has had way more man hours thrown at it from all these different people trying and refining it and finding what
furthermore,
works and
half
doesn't
guard
work.
is a more universal guard too, right? Like, because you can do there's a lot of carryover between, let's break it down a little bit further, even between gi, no gi, and MMA for that matter, right? Whereas lapel is just, it's there's going to be zero carryover to MMA and no gi. So
Gi Jiu-Jitsu, baby. That's
so
it.
the likelihood of you even encountering that if you're splitting your time between gi and no gi is essentially 50%, right? And then if you split it up even further, how much do you are you going to be able to funnel to lapel stuff, you know? So that's why I feel as though it's an extremely niche thing that Keenan has done an extremely good job of finding that niche and exploiting it. Um, I'm curious as to see where this goes to, you know, because I've experienced it a little bit, and it's been not fun to deal with. It's just, I mean, it's been extremely annoying, and that's with somebody who doesn't even use the system. So we'll see. I'll be happy to when I'm back on the mats there, kind of help you out and play before and after class with it. So,
Oh yeah,
you know,
like I said, the people are gonna avoid rolling with me. If I'm good at it, they'll avoid rolling. If I'm not, everyone will roll with me. But I think I have come to, like, I'm of the opinion when people say, well, do half guard because what you do in no gi and gi, it's the same thing, and I really disagree with that. Like, I think when you wear the gi, regardless of what game you play, it's going to be a different experience between gi and no gi. And who cares if you're wrapping lapels around people's arms? It's just the way people. I find playing half guard and no gi right now significantly easier than in gi. Because in gi, there are so many ways people can grab and attach themselves to me, grabbing lapels, grabbing sleeves, that I don't have to worry about in no gi. And that's going to happen in any position, whether you're playing butterfly. Paul says I have no problem passing butterfly guard in gi. In no gi, if a guy is good, then I'm going to have to be way more careful. So just being able to grab gi grips, whatever they are, lapel or not, are going to force you to play not significantly different games to me in order to achieve the same level of success at both levels. You know, if you're Gordon Ryan, you're going to smash me anyway doing, you know,
basically whatever you want.
You're going to grapple in the gi and wreck me. Absolutely. But him and Keenan both agree that if they were to go in gi, now equally skilled guys, Keenan's going to wrap him up left, you know, and just own him in the gi. You know what I mean? Because he knows the grip. So I think like I said, something part of me thinks the lapel system that Keenan plays is almost like ludicrous, but at the same time, you can't draw the line and say this lapel grip or this grip is ludicrous and these other ones are not. The minute you wear a gi, you can suddenly start grabbing things and using it as an instrument. And this is the crazy thing. The biggest reason I might consider using lapel guard as my primary, let's say, distance guard, because half guard is something that's going to happen when people get closer or they pass maybe my first layer of guard. What's appealing about lapel guard to me is it appears to be less damaging and tiring on my fingers than playing, let's say, spider guard or lasso guard.
Oh, sure.
And Keenan's even said that. It's like once you start grabbing the lapel, that's a totally different grip where you're wrapping your entire fingers and you're not getting your fingers violently ripped off.
You're also reinforcing your grip with your limbs or their limbs, right? So
Correct.
Any major traumatic sort of like grip breaks that somebody's going to do, your thigh or shin or ankle or their whatever limb is going to be what's essentially the shock absorber, right? So I can definitely see that. Cool. That's I not say that I'm not a little jealous.
When I get to it, I am looking forward to introducing those looks into the gym, because at the very least, I think it's going to be a benefit for people to get better at defending it. Even if I'm not doing that good of a job, at least the ideas get out there, so you don't have a situation where some new guy shows up from another gym that plays lapel guard and wrecks the entire gym because no one's ever seen it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think leg locks had that effect a few years ago. Definitely less so now in the jiu-jitsu community and different gyms because they're more prevalent. But certainly a few years ago, if you knew leg entanglements, you could probably go into a lot of gyms and fuck up most people just because there's an absence of that knowledge out there. So lapel is a gap, is a hole that I think everyone should be aware of in the gi game because it has been shown to be effective.
Oh, incredibly effective.
So, and here's the kicker. You know what? I'll give you an indirect way I was convinced I needed to get this. And it's not from Keenan. It was maybe it was the algorithms at play, but to me it was by sheer chance. I subscribe to the Atos YouTube channel. And they put out a lot of quality content, in my opinion. I think Galvao is a very good instructor and very knowledgeable, especially in the gi. And it just so happened that I was recommended a competition prep with Andre Galvao and Ebert Santos. And this is the guy that was supposed to face Herbert. Yeah.
The dude
and
who
he was
like
supposed
runs
to
in
face
the crowd and punches people.
He was supposed to have a match with Gordon Ryan recently. Gordon pulled out because he contracted COVID, as did
Is that
Craig
who he
Jones.
was supposed to face at that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Who's number one?
Really?
In no-gi though. Okay. So I would have given it
sure.
to Gordon most likely. Anyway, they're grappling. Andre Galvao. Attributes upon attributes, and Santos is a big, strong dude too, lanky. But I'm watching this footage. I tune in. I was like, ooh, let's see what this looks like. How are they rolling? And I expect these guys to be either on their feet, just fucking grabbing lapels and shucking them down, like when Rodolfo Rivera, like boom, they take a step back and they just start, trying to slam their head through the mat, sort of thing. Or
like the snap down in a gi, basically.
Yeah, snap down, or pressure pass heaven. What do I see? Galvao playing lapel guard.
Really?
And all he's doing is passing that lapel back and forth between his hands. How can I get this under the guy's leg? He gets out of it. I got to get that lapel back under. And then maybe 2 or 3 times Santos is close to passing the guard. There's a mad scramble. Some hips kind of move and gyrate, and then he's back into guard. Oh, where's that lapel? Grab that lapel, feed it out, feed it back in, reverse de la Hiva, lapel, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be damned if by the end of it, Galvao managed to secure a lapel sweep, secure top position, and control. And I'm sitting there, Andre Galvao, this monster, is fishing for lapels and feeding them and doing this bullshit. And I say that with love, but I'm like, what the fuck? So I saw that and I was like, if Galvao's doing it, I need to be aware of this shit.
So just to clarify for people who don't know, it just occurred to me, we keep on using lapel guard. I'm not sure a lot of people even understand what that means. I mean, if you're in jiu-jitsu, you do, right? It just basically means anywhere.
No, you have a good point. It illuminate the audience for those of you who are like, what are they talking about?
Alan, I'll just throw it out there. Our one Canadian listener. Lapel is, by definition, is the entire length of the collar from one side of your your lapel. It's the other side. So from all the way down to the, where the I guess the hips or the waist of the jacket is. But oftentimes people will say collar when you're trying to do a collar choke or strangle, when you're using that in particular to either break posture or to start working your strangles and that sort of thing, or to secure good tight head control for takedowns. But lapel is, I want to say it's distinctly Keenan who didn't necessarily invent it. I don't know who first started using it, but definitely popularized it.
Oh, he doesn't claim to be the inventor
But
of
yeah,
it.
he systemized it, popularized it, and definitely utilized it in competition. He explored it.
And he started giving names to different positions and systems. He called, he's got reverse Della worm, ringworm, worm guard. Like he's like, much like 10th Planet, he's come up with catchy names.
And it's gripping anywhere that's not the collar. One could probably call it like the tail of the lapel towards the bottom, or the hips, basically. So you're controlling the person's posture
and rotation
and hips by way of that, by wrapping that around and across various parts of your own body and their body to immobilize.
And just as an even simpler analogy for people that can't picture a kimono or a gi in their mind and know when we say what that lapel is that runs from one end to the other. Imagine you just had a rope that
you just
was
drape over
fairly long, and it was draped around your neck over your shoulders and came to a little below your hips. And
that is now,
of course, it won't slide off. It's somehow attached to you,
to your jacket.
And I'm grabbing an end of that rope, and now I'm weaving it under maybe my leg, around your leg, and basically pulling you down and twisting you somewhat while anchoring it to my body somehow. And that's kind of the basic mechanism of what Keenan's lapel guards are, is pulling on that end and inserting your leg somewhere in there, or wrapping it around something. And there are a lot of positions where things do get wrapped up, which again makes me call it kind of bullshitty, because that's just how I feel about it, But again, it's within the rules.
Exactly. So.
And he's made the case that, hey man, in the street this would work. People wear jackets, so. He's done jiu-jitsu in clothing and tried doing stuff like that.
Which I feel like
what I found out from him, which was illegal, which I didn't know, was you can't do double lasso in IBJJF. That's an illegal position. You'll be disqualified. So if I do a lasso on both sides while grabbing the arms,
really,
that's illegal, because it's considered an excessive stall position.
Yeah, I was say, like, it definitely immobilizes their upper body. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of, like, what can you really do with that? Unless you're willing.
Well, I don't think you can do anything,
yeah.
but
yeah, I can see why that would be. But that's the thing is, like, banning that position doesn't that stifle the potential creativity for people to work on systems off of that? Or does it have 100%. To be locked on for a certain amount of time before they're like, okay, like yellow card or, half point deduction or whatever the case is?
That I don't know, but
I
Keenan was like, I'm in agreement. I think it's a good rule because it's this heavily stalling position. You can't really do anything.
Yeah, I can see.
But no one's necessarily explored it because they just deemed it illegal.
Yeah, so that's where it's like, it's a catch-22, right?
I mean, 50-50 was a stalling position for a long time, but I feel like recently people are comfortable with it in the gi. Obviously, in no gi, when you can do footlocks and heel hooks, that completely changes what 50-50 is. But 50-50 in the gi, when you cannot do heel hooks, so you don't have to worry about heel exposure so much, was considered a stalling position and not frowned upon. Well, in a way, frowned upon as a way, it's kind of a cheap way to just kind of stall in matches. But
have you heard
I feel
Ryan
like
Hall's opinion about 50-50, how it might be the best
self-defense position?
It's
Yeah.
interesting, but I don't necessarily agree with it. But the best.
Well, his approach. So that's another rabbit hole that I have yet to explore, but I will explore. And actually, he has a half guard instructional series that I might peek at some point. We'll see. But aside from that, both him and Lachlan Giles seem to release instructionals on the same thing, and they have completely different takes on it because Lachlan's approaching it from a jiu-jitsu point of view, and Ryan Hall approaches it from an MMA point of view. So they have similar or identical techniques in some ways, but then they diverge a lot because their criteria, their thought logic, their logic is a little different, you know? So I know when it comes to the 50-50 instructionals, they diverge significantly, even though there are a lot of things that are in common and identical techniques, especially for some attacks from backside 50-50, which was all the rage recently because of Lachlan's success at ADCC and Ryan Hall's success getting BJ Penn. They were both backside entries, and that's kind of new, or at least not widespread. I guess the Meow brothers were doing this to get into 50-50 back in the day in gi, but no one was really paying attention to the Meow brothers. So apparently, on a side note, apparently the Meow brothers are nasty motherfuckers that innovate the hell out of the gi and jiu-jitsu in general. Like, they're really like crazy, like wide range of techniques. This is just word of mouth from other noteworthy jiu-jitsu practitioners. So that was just a divergent. But Lachlan in particular credits the Meow brothers for giving him, not explicitly, but him seeing them do stuff,
Inspiration,
and getting ideas from that. Exactly, inspiring. So I definitely want to compare and contrast the two 50-50 instructionals between Lachlan and Ryan Hall, but that's going to be a lengthy endeavor because they're both, I think, like 8 hours plus, or 6 to 8 hours, you know. So it's significant. And right now I'm not that interested in going down the leg lock rabbit hole and improving that part of my game right now. I'm interested in doing some other stuff first.
Half guard,
shoring
lapel,
up my half guard, lapel, and just doing the fundamentals better, man. You know, Paul doesn't kick my ass because he's doing new school shit. He kicks my ass because he does the fundamentals curriculum. Hodger Gracie won all his titles because he did the fundamentals curriculum. And he was also, I know he had attributes. You always
he's also out, like 6'10", like 240.
Now you're exaggerating. But the point being is that I think I do want to believe right now, my mindset is I want to believe that fundamental jiu-jitsu will take you the farthest. And these other things are, you know, the quote new school stuff are just zesty, flavorful condiments you add to your game afterwards. But the actual meal that's your game are good fundamentals, good systems around the fundamentals, and the basic positions that have been around from
because those are universal, right? They're universal across the spectrum of gi, jiu-jitsu, no-gi, and MMA for the most part. Where the razzle-dazzle, as we discussed previously, that comes into play when you're gaming the system, right? So
or you're narrowing the rule set or scenario.
Yeah, that's true too. And you're not necessarily competing. So that's why, that's why jiu-jitsu is awesome. Like,
I know, man.
That's where I need to get back on the mats, right? Like I'm getting pretty bored just hitting that bag.
Hey man, get some mats in your garage. I'll come over and we can do shit.
I don't think that's far out of the realm of possibility for me to do.
Yeah, man. Garage Jiu-Jitsu with Chris Vu.
It's
and a select few.
Yeah,
of
it's.
pre-screened grapplers whose
I will.
temperatures have been
I mean, your
have
temperature is
been
going to
checked.
automatically be high considering you're in the garage. Which
Well,
I never.
prior to
Well,
entry of
that's
the
true. True.
garage.
Out of your air conditioned vehicle.
Yeah.
I need to look into that, but it's I really miss jiu-jitsu.
Dude, jiu-jitsu is awesome, and I don't know how much people really care. I mean, maybe a lot of people tuned out when I started going over all these details of the various things I'm practicing, but I definitely view like jiu-jitsu as going to college again and taking courses in different things. And it's like it's like you're in a major where there are all these classes that interest you, but you can only fit so many into your schedule any given semester. And that's what I feel like with jiu-jitsu right now. There are a lot of different directions I want to go, but I know that there's only so much mental capacity I have to balance the stuff in my head. And I know that can vary from grappler to grappler, but I think I've kind of keyed in on what I can handle. I know Faraz Sahabi said a few things that kind of made sense to me. He's like, if you're grappling and you're not confused at all, you're not trying enough things out. If you feel paralyzed and don't know what to do, you might be overwhelming yourself with too many techniques at the same time. So I think that's a good way to kind of evaluate where you are, because I do think, especially, the farther along you get, I think the more it becomes self-discovery and self-pursuit in terms of which directions you want to study and develop and add. And even if it's stuff you don't add to your game, it's still stuff you're interested in.
But it's stuff
that's
that you
where I'm
should
at.
at least become familiar with.
Correct.
That's ultimately it. Like, what, for example, right now we've glossed over lapel guard, we've glossed over claw ride. What's the actual curriculum right now? Like, what is everybody working on?
So I think the gyms suffered a little bit because of COVID in that respect. I think that's the one drawback to having mixed classes. I've personally enjoyed the mixed classes. I like having everyone on the mat, but I do think it's probably made life harder for our white belts, because I think having a curriculum that limits the amount of content that's being shared with students, that it's trickling it out instead of overwhelming it with technique after technique after technique, is what allows a fundamentals curriculum to develop students faster. So let me restate that. I don't know if I followed my train of thought well enough there. But my point is the fact that we're all mixed together, we're getting a higher variety of techniques than we would if we had separate classes. And for upper belts, that's fine, because everything we're going over we've probably seen. So if anything, it's, oh, here's a nuance to a technique I already know, or here's Paul's tweaked how he's teaching it, but it's something I already know. Whereas for the white belts, it's all new, and if you're getting a bunch of new stuff every month, if you're getting 20 techniques in a month instead of, let's say, 10, it's going to be overwhelming, and they're probably going to perform a lot less unless they're a real savant and they can grasp everything super quickly. So we've covered a lot of different things, and currently what I can piece together between the random lessons that will get thrown out there on a daily basis, for the colored belts, we're working on passing half guard, or not half guard, spider guard. We're working on different ways to pass spider guard. And for the white belts, they're doing a mixture of armbar escape, triangle escape, and some close guard stuff. But again, it's very improvised / on the fly, depending on who's teaching, the student body there, because there's a difference between having people that have no stripes or one stripe and someone like Joey who's on the cusp of getting his blue belt. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's definitely something there. For me, I probably am getting a little less out of it, but at the same time, I have more than enough personal things that I'm working on that I still feel like I'm improving. the last time we had a really structured curriculum was when we did DPAF. That was the last time, and then COVID hit. But we spent a month on DPAF in the colored belt curriculum, let's say, intermediate advanced class, and I thought everyone got better at it. And I think that was really because we spent a month on it.
Yeah.
And we got to really explore it. So that's what I like. I don't know if that's the best. I don't know if that's what other students like, but that's what I think is cool when you deep dive into something for a month and then you go on to another topic. And that means you're going to cover 12 things in a year, but you're going to cover them in depth. And I think 12 things in a year, especially if you're talking about a guard system or a passing system, those are significant upgrades to your game if you haven't seen them before, you know? So that's where we are with the curriculum right now. That's what we're studying right now, and that's some unsolicited commentary on how I think it compares to what we've done in the past.
Like you said, it's a very unique situation right now, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are you contemplating working on when you come back? What do you think is the first thing you're going to work on when you come back? Or do you not have like explicit goals when you train?
I don't. I just...
You suck.
I don't. I mean, like, honestly, like, I just sort of, if whatever it is,
you're about being alive, man. Aliveness, being in the moment.
Yeah, and my goal as a student and my goal now as a teacher is to do the best I can for whatever it is that we're supposed to be working on. You know, that's my responsibility as an instructor.
I think you've, especially since getting your black belt, but even prior to that, I feel like you're very generous, almost too much so in my opinion, in terms of wanting to make sure everyone else that you can help that's a lower rank gets the lesson. And I feel like you've prioritized that and the growth of everyone else's jiu-jitsu and spreading the art over you exploring a new thing. Like I've heard Steve Wynn say, like, I just started playing close guard. I feel like I need to get better at close guard. So I started playing that. I've never really heard you make a comment like that. Like, oh, I'm going to play spider guard now. Or I'm going to play with this. I want to get better at this, so I'm going to play with this for the month. Because you've always been either running a class or pulling yourself out to help someone else or rolling with lower belts and letting them work. Because you working a guard might not be the best thing for that student's role, so to speak.
Yeah,
if you want to work with them, you know,
like,
especially if we're a lapel guard, right? Hey, new white belt, let's roll, and I'm going to work lapel guard with you.
Make a student get frustrated and quit. That would probably be it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of truth to what you just said. I mean, like, it's something I've always been wanting to work on more, is just my guard passing. You know, like, if I want to roll and not work on something, then I'll, you know, when we're starting from our knees, I'm not just going to sit back. But otherwise, it's pretty much what you said. Like, I just want everybody to have a good time on the mat, right? So I don't come with specific goals in mind other than, you know, like when the Danaher stuff was out and new, a lot of that was kind of had that. I mean, it's so recent that I was a fairly higher belt by that point. So it's not something that I really have the opportunity to funnel and whatnot.
I need to finish those, man. I think I want to do the Kimura one
there's
next.
So many, man. It's between his and Gordon's now. There's just too much content, right? Like it's definitely the paradox of choice because there's so many, an infinite number of positions and situations in jiu-jitsu, right? So where do you even begin?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's so many classes that you want to take, but there's only so much time.
And
so you have to figure out, you know, what that class schedule is going to be, what classes you're going to enroll with, what instruction,
and how deep you want to go, right? Because there are levels, you know. Let's just look at something like calculus. There's like Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3.
Sure.
So
And for majors, they might only require you to take Calc
Right.
1, whereas
Yeah.
others will require you to take Calc 3.
Because that's just the idea of university, right? Is to familiarize you, because when you receive your doctorate, what does PhD stand for? It's a doctor of philosophy, right? And what is philosophy? It's the love of knowledge. So
There was another expression that Firas Zahabi used, I think around the same time that he mentioned what I mentioned earlier about, overloading your brain. I think he'll do these Q&As sometime. I don't know if it's on YouTube or social media. I don't know if they're live or not, but he'll kind of do Q&As. He'll answer questions. And I think these two things he said were maybe in response to two questions or similar questions, but he used the word recipes. And I thought it was extremely appropriate. And he said, when I do jiu-jitsu, I have these recipes that work. And I'll do them again and again and again. And over time, I'll get bored, so then I'll start exploring other recipes or trying to cultivate other recipes. But it really hit home for me because I'm thinking, as you get better, that's your A game, that recipe of, and I'll just go through something. Like, okay, I'll pull half guard. I'll put in my butterfly hook. I'll go to single leg X. I'll get the foot on my shoulder. I'll stand up, sweep them, pass the side, mount, cross choke. And I've done that sequence a bunch of times. And I know anybody who's grappled for more than a year can identify like a chain of moves that they'll do repeatedly, whether they consciously think about it or not when they roll.
Especially
it's something
if
they're comfortable with.
People all the time.
Especially rolling with the same people, right? Where now you have, patterns that are the same and they're going to generate similar patterns. But the fact that you use recipe made perfect sense. Like it's almost a nice way of saying a solution. You know what I mean? These are multiple solutions, but in this case, it's creating a meal, a recipe. These are different recipes. You can say algorithms, but I think recipe is a real appropriate word. And I think that's something that any higher belt experienced grappler is going to be wrestling with, no pun intended. And that's this idea of, if I'm good at something, it'll probably work a lot of times, but do I want to keep honing that recipe, or do I want to keep exploring other things, and broadening? And I think that's something you obviously have an opportunity to do. I also find it interesting that I feel like when a guy like Zach's there, I don't even think I don't think I've seen you roll with Zach. I feel like you always get paired off with, go with that blue belt there, or go with that new white belt over there. And then Zach goes with, a hungry purple belt or something,
I mean, like, not to say that Zach hasn't, worked a full day and been up and had weird hours and stuff too, but he also doesn't have to go home to a kid, and just other responsibilities. So he knows where everybody, or rather he has a good idea of where everybody's energy level is for that day too, and he's respectful of that, which I appreciate. So I think that's more, but I will say I've rolled more with Zach, let's say BC, than AD, right?
In your hungry days.
Yeah. I mean, that can be said for when I was doing no-gi and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu all in the same. Yeah, I mean, so that's how I'm more familiar with Zach's game than that's how I've become familiar with Zach's game, rather. So, but yeah, it's hard to, and that's where I've kind of said too, like, it's always very refreshing to just sit back and just take class and try to improve whatever it is that I'm working on, or we're all working on as a group, So that's why.
Yeah, I think you should try to do that when you come back.
Try to work on something in particular?
Just be a student,
I would not mind.
And not assume the instructor or assistant instructor role.
Yeah, but it's also, it's such is life, though, right? And if I can help
if it's something you enjoy doing, by all means, but if you're like, I'm kind of in the mood to just, work some top guard stuff, with some decent guard players, then go do that.
Yeah, and I will, trust me, I'll be coming back a noob. I mean, like, I've been gone away at this point for how many months? Since.
But you've been training.
I mean,
you've been lifting.
I've not been training. This is training and working out, right? Training is doing something.
I'm using training for strength and conditioning.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, the training is. I've been staying in shape.
Not skill development technique like Jiu-Jitsu skill development. I'm talking.
Yeah, I mean, I've been staying in shape, if anything.
Yeah, you're gonna come in with traps up to your ears, man. I'm scared.
Nah, not exactly. I mean, I've been. There's a little bit of a setback in there, right? I definitely won't. I probably won't gas as other people will likely gas if they've been away off the mats as long as I have been. So, my timing will definitely be off. That's the first thing to go. My skill set, I'll probably have devolved back to like purple belt Chris again. And I'll be really caught off guard by what everybody else has been working on, and I haven't been able to become familiar with. So that's sort of the MO of the guy who's coming back after a layoff, right?
Yeah, you'll be like, damn, everyone's been practicing this. Dude, that happened to me today. All these white belts really were going for footlocks on me. And I was like, who? When did this happen? And good old Gabriel, man, spilled the beans. He's like, well, one day Eric had to teach class. And I was like, aha!
Oh, God.
I knew it.
So they were exploding into footlocks, is what you're saying?
No, actually, to be fair, they were attacking him from actual leg entanglement positions. But it was just, they were exposing themselves to either a back take or getting smashed because I don't think they entirely understood the control points of the position, nor should they after one class. Yeah, exactly. But it's just funny to see white belts falling back and wrapping their legs around your foot or around your legs and then grabbing your foot. And I'm like, wait a minute. What did I miss?
Was that
so? Yeah. That was amusing. But I should have, I have no complaints because shit, I'm the one that teaches a lot of this stuff half the time. If I have an opportunity, it's usually, hey, teach a leg entanglement stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I'm probably contributing to it as much as anybody. But it's fine. I'm cool with it. But like I said, it's a little jarring when it's like somebody drastically changes the way they roll from one week to another. And you're like, what happened there?
So that just goes to show then, at least they're trying techniques they've just learned.
Exactly. Like that is all you can ask for.
Right. As long as they're trying it. They don't have to, like you said, they don't have to implement it in their game and make it a big part of their system and their A game. As long as they're trying it and they figure out through experimentation whether they like it or not. What does it fit to my body type? Does it fit to my personality? Does it fit to just the positions I encounter a lot and my sort of funnels right now? What more can you ask for? That's good. Even white belts doing that. Like, and they're probably approaching it with the best beginner's mindset because they are beginners, right? Like, how insulting is it to see higher belts sit there and just go through the motions of whatever it is we're learning in curriculum, and then when it comes time to roll and drill and whatever the case is, they just ignore everything that we just worked on for the past 30 minutes and just do whatever it is they normally do, right? Like, that's, as an instructor, I would be insulted by that because at least try, So that's what's all about.
That I think is also where situational sparring comes in, and I think the head instructor can funnel people.
If you lay out the parameters,
how they direct class. Yeah, there's free sparring. Yeah, that's randori basically, and then there's situational sparring with progressive resistance or something like that, or very specific rules, or it's gamified. All the stuff we always come back to talking about
for actual proper skill development and enriching yourself as a jiu-jitsu practitioner.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I I'm sticking to my goals for 2020 of playing top more and perhaps trying takedowns more. So that's been, it was a little sidelined, obviously, with, the coming of the COVIDs in March. That sidelined everybody. So, but that's still top of mind for me, at least, So,
Well, I mean, roll with me, man. I'll pull half
in due
guard,
time.
or at least that's what will happen right now. Maybe I'll be pulling lapel guard soon, but I'll be pulling a guard, so you'll have plenty of opportunity to smash. All right, dude. We've gone an hour and a half, a solid hour and a half.
Yeah, man. And I think you.
I appreciate you staying
how many
up.
royalties are you getting from Keenan? What percentage?
There is an affiliate program. I have not signed up for it, but once I do, maybe I don't know if I would, but if I do, then maybe I will start espousing the
BJJ
virtues
and Brews
of
20. Put it in your coupon code for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Keenan, if you're listening,
get that percentage. Keenan, if you're listening, you got me. You're a good marketer. I'm sure Lloyd Orvin had
it's
a fair
beyond
amount to
just
play
the
in
marketing,
that.
though. I mean, I'm sure he actually puts out a good product, because anytime I've heard him describe even something as simple as the placement of rooms at his gym, everything seems to be pretty well thought out.
Dude, he purchased a 3D printer.
To do what?
And has a 3D printer at his gym.
To make what? Masks?
Well, the first thing he made was a cell phone holder for his Tesla, so go figure. But I don't know, man. I'll give the guy I'll give the guy credit. He's an innovator. Whether the stuff makes sense to me all the time, that's a secondary topic. But the guy tries.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, he's definitely.
And he's a charismatic personality too.
Yeah, he's definitely
sure.
But charisma that's not off-putting. He seems to be.
Nor is it like, look at me, I'm God.
Exactly. It's very humble and also very. What's the opposite of off-putting? I guess. Appealing, inviting. He's extremely humble. I really enjoy listening to him speak about even matters that I'm not sure he's an expert on, but he seems to have well thought out opinions about things. So, but he's good at what he does.
Yeah, man. I definitely do want to visit his gym at some point, whenever that is, and drop in and do one of his open mats maybe and just see that environment. But that's in the future, when everybody is traveling and jiu-jitsu is free to be performed everywhere and people will accept outsiders, and
we'll do a little jiu-jitsu field trip and I can be in your pod.
There we go.
Both,
We'll take all the earnings we get from this podcast and invest it in a BJJ and Brews trip.
A BJJ Brews private plane, I heard.
Oh yeah, private plane. We'll take all the recording equipment, record on location. It's going to be the whole shebang.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll get there.
Well, listen, Chris, it's been a pleasure. I know you're getting a little sleepy. You got to wake up early, so I appreciate the time as always. I enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you being the yin for my yang, or vice versa.
I definitely was way less angry about certain things than you were today, which is typically, it's atypical, actually.
No, you have the wisdom and the experience, and I'm reacting. I'm reacting like a young whippersnapper.
You are reacting. I am responding.
Right? Exactly. I'm a disrespectful gringo lower belt. Just shut up and train. So I don't know why that sounded like a weird Russian.
So,
wow. By the way, did you see Danaher imitating Bernardo Faria?
No, I'd actually.
I'll send you. It's like a 10-second clip, but he's like, "Guys, huge honor for me with my friend Bernardo Faria."
Somebody who has a New Zealand accent trying to do somebody who.
He got the nasally Portuguese accent though. He's like, he got that going. It was good. I'll give him credit. I'll send it to you. Anyway, Chris, until next time, man.
Yeah.
We'll chat.
All right.